Shall we play a game?
The computer. Startlingly fast. Incredibly precise. And now from Magnavox comes the first computer TV. Touch Tune color television. Touch Tune and lock in computer sharp color, computer fast, even by remote. Computer reliability in a wide range of prices and styles. Star System Touch Tune color television from Magnavox.
3 vintage clips of days gone by. In this episode, we take a nostalgic look at American technology from the 1980s till today. I'm Chris Casey, and this is Sea to Shining Sea. Welcome back to Sea to Shining Sea. I'm Chris Casey, and another wonderful episode here. This is episode 7. Wow, I never thought I'd be at episode 7 here on Sea to Shining Sea. I want to personally thank each and every one of you who have downloaded. We're up to 257 downloads since November. Thank you, everybody. Just remember, hey, you could reach out to me at ChrisCasey71 and Sea to Shining Sea 2019 at gmail.com. Today's episode, everybody, we're going to talk about American technology, the 1980s until now. And for those of you my age who are 70s and 80s, I'll tell you what, we've seen technology just skyrocket. So I thought we'd take a little nostalgic trip back to the 1980s, to my childhood, and to a friend of mine's childhood. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you another guest on my show, co-host, and I hope he'll hang out a few more times, my good friend David Musgrave. Welcome, David.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate it. Weird to be on
the owner of People vs. Happiness, creator and my collaborator when we get together for the concession counter. David, what is People vs. Happiness?
Well, that is a good question. People vs. Happiness is a lot of things, but at the heart of it, it is a podcast that looks into the meaning of happiness, what happiness is to different individuals. There's kind of a core group of questions that I often ask guests on the show, but it kind of has evolved into just a conversation about things that make us happy. Therefore, things like clearing up the past with my sister Erin. We talk about old nostalgic movies and stuff from our childhood that made us happy. You and I, we do the concession counter. That's specifically just a kind of a movie review. We talk movie news, and then we'll review a specific movie, kind of challenge each other back and forth. Like, hey, let's watch this and talk about it, type of a thing. So, and then there are just other conversations that I have with people, like Kartik Bardwaj is often on the show. We just kind of rant about whatever. So it's a little bit of everything. It's check it out. And you'll find something that you'll like, most likely.
Yes, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, People versus Happiness. And I'll tell you what, David, what makes me happy is recording a podcast. How about you?
Yeah, heck yeah, man. I'm glad to be here on lucky number 7. I didn't realize that this was going to be the 7th episode. That's awesome, man.
Awesome, man. All right. So I'm a child of the 70s and 80s. And David, you're a little bit younger than I am, aren't you?
Yeah. So I was born in the early 80s. So really, I mean, most of my true memories come from kind of the 90s when it comes to technology and stuff like that. So I'll be sharing a little bit more of, I mean, I actually, I have older sisters, and so I do have lots of memories from the 80s as well, but probably will be a little more in the 90s.
Okay, great. Well, folks, we're going to break it down into a few segments here. 3 segments. We're going to talk about our first phone and the phones we have today and kind of compare those. Both David and I are going to give our experiences with that. And then we're also going to talk about our first computer that we ever... Who'd have thought about a world without computers? Guess what? I lived in that world, y'all. and then we'll do a little public service announcement, and then we'll wrap it up here talking about technology, talking about television and television that we've seen in our lifetime and how crazy it is today. And a little nugget at the end for a little nostalgia piece, taking a look at that 80s technology that we're mainly going to focus on today. And the top 7 things from the 80s. I'm going to have you wondering the whole episode. The top 7 things from the 80s that really made a mark, according to popularmechanics.com.
Cool.
Anyway, so let's begin, David.
Yeah, I'm excited, man.
American technology, 1980-ish till now. Your first phone, sir.
Ooh.
Tell me what's your first phone that you remember.
So, you say American technology, but I have a feeling a lot of this is going to be Japanese, Korean.
Japanese. Well said. Touche. Well, when it made it to America,
yes.
and us as Americans
yes, that's...
embraced it and found out about it and such.
So I guess when I think about my first telephone, I mean, I don't really have a strong memory of like first telephone. I know that we had a rotary phone, so I can recall using the rotary phone. So having to actually put your finger in the hole and make it go all the way around the semicircle and let go, and here do the little and then do the next one and you couldn't help but take like 5 minutes to make a phone call because you had to wait for each number to spin back.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh, that was so long ago.
So I definitely remember having those phones, but when I really think of the phone of my childhood, I do think of like a cordless phone. That was the big kind of innovation, right? Where you had a little handset that you had to hang up on the cradle, and if you left it off the cradle for too long, then it would die, and you couldn't answer the phone.
Or if you didn't hang it up, right? I bet you that it would go beep 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 beep, have that busy signal.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it had the little antenna at the top of it. I don't even know. It basically looked like an old school car antenna, if people even know what that looks like anymore. But the telescopic aluminum antenna that you would pull out. I don't even know if it did anything. But it seemed like no matter how, if you got too far away from the base of the phone, it was going to get scratchy and come in and out, whether you had that stupid telescopic antenna extended all the way or not. As a kid, I remember playing with it, pretending like it was a sword more than anything. But
nice. You didn't break it, did you?
Oh, I'm sure I probably did once or twice.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you were really high class if you had an answering machine. Part of that, didn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, didn't they have like answering machine with, if I remember right, cassette tapes?
Yeah. No, I definitely remember the cassette tape answering machine. Absolutely, it's crazy. I mean, cassette tapes in and of themselves is such a antiquated piece of technology, but to think that was what would record voice messages, and you'd go and you'd look and see if the little light was on, and if it would say 1 or 2 or 3, depending on how many messages you have, and you'd play it, and if you didn't like what you heard, you didn't want to hear from somebody that called you, or it was a telemarketer or something, you just hit next, and it would fast forward basically to the next. Yeah, that's kind of wild. I haven't thought about that for a long time, man.
Y'all, that's way before voicemail. Voicemail was not a word in 1980s.
No. I mean, yeah, you just checking your messages. It wasn't. That's what you would call it. It's not checking your voicemail.
I think doesn't like Friends when they always check their messages. There was some episodes where messages were left or something, and there was a part of the plot or whatever, and you could really tell in that and they had the cordless phones, so it was a big deal between the late 80s and 90s.
That's funny. That is funny.
Yeah.
I know we're going to talk about television in a little bit, but that is a good point. That they were definitely, it was a vehicle for a lot of jokes and sitcoms and stuff like that, and really probably plot, something that would drive plot and dramas and everything too. But I could definitely think of kind of running gags where somebody would call and leave a bunch of voicemails back to back and just start sounding more and more desperate as the voicemails went on and people skipping through them and stuff. Yeah, that was a classic joke vehicle.
Oh yes. Hey, it's all right, man. We're movie and TV guys, so they already know that. I've already done a couple movie episodes, so they know that I'm one of those guys. So
yeah.
What about your first cell phone? Do you remember your first cell phone?
Oh yeah, clearly, man. So I did not get a cell phone until I think I was a senior in high school, or maybe my freshman year of college. And my girlfriend at the time actually bought it for me. so that she could keep track of me a little bit better, most likely.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I mean, not that I was, running around or anything like that, but still.
Right. Well, just knowing where you were. And,
Yeah.
Hey, I know who he's calling, what's going on.
And in back in the day, man, you used to just get in the car and drive, and you were disconnected.
Yeah.
And if you had to get a hold of somebody, you waited until you got home.
Right.
You didn't check in with people all day long and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was a Nokia 5180, I believe, which is a blue. I mean, I can see it very clearly in my mind. A blue phone that almost looked like a smaller version of a cordless phone that you would think of people having at their home.
Okay.
So it had a small screen like a cordless phone would, just a little black and green background.
Yes.
Screen.
Was that the monochrome? It had a monochrome and black type on it.
Yep. It sure did. It sure did. And it had a little antenna that you would pull out too. Again, I don't think those antennas did anything, but maybe it just made you feel like you were getting better reception. But you could text and you could make phone calls and you could play Snake on it. That's about it.
Yeah. You know what? You know what's funny? I think I had the same phone.
Oh yeah,
I didn't get it. I didn't get a cell phone till early 2000s.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's when this would have been 1999, 2000 when I got it. And
awesome.
Yeah, and you had to, to send a text message, you had to hit the numbers 3 times if you're, it's ABC for 2 and then EFG for 3. So if you
sending a text was terrible, man. You're like, text?
So freaking
I'm just
good
calling
at it.
you, man. I'm not going to text you.
No, man, I got so good at it. I didn't even have to look at my phone. That is one advantage of this. If you got good at it, you could text and drive, which okay, here's a little PSA. I know you're going to do a PSA later. Don't text and drive. I'm not condoning this, but I am saying that back then I could literally be sending a text message without looking at my phone, and just I had all the placement and the letters memorized, so I could send it. And it'd be perfect without even looking at it once.
Wow. And hey, this was pre-flip phone, correct?
Mm-hmm.
This was just I too had the same thing.
Yep.
But and now your phone now is probably pretty nice. I think you have an iPhone just like I do, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I've got the XS.
I'm sporting the 11. I had to retire my 7. It was not keeping keeping up with the Joneses. So the battery was dying like crazy. So
I thought you were going to say that your X wasn't holding up well enough, and you just had to upgrade to that 11 as soon as it came out.
Yeah, there's that. Oh my goodness. So that's your history of phones. Any other phones that you remember? Did you have any niche phones, fun things? Like back in the day, in the 80s, there was some niche stuff. There is today, kind of, but back in the 80s, it kind of really, like the Mickey Mouse phone is one I remember seeing all the time.
I think my sister had a Mickey Mouse phone. I think at one point in time we had a phone that was shaped like a hamburger. I think we had a Garfield phone, all that kind of crap, that very kitschy, kitschy stuff from the. But I will say that, from cell phone standpoint, after that Nokia 5180, the flip phone you're talking about, that's when you first were able to take a picture, like a little color picture.
Right.
It was terrible, but you still could take one. I had an LG flip phone. I had one of the little sidekick things that you could slide open, and a little keyboard would be in there. And my first smartphone was a Samsung Fascinate, and then I had a range of smartphones in between there that all blur together up until I finally this is the first iPhone that I've ever had. And I resisted for many years, but Beth finally converted me, and I will never go back.
You know what they say, resistance is futile. Another movie reference. Anyway.
Did you have any a taco phone or anything crazy?
I did not have a taco phone. I had a Coke bottle phone in my room as a teenager. Yeah, it was a Coke bottle. It was a phone, and it had it had a push button bottom for the digits, but when you pushed the button, it made the sound like a rotary phone, which was aggravating.
Yeah,
it's what is going on here? So in my history of phones, I go back to when I was real young and every phone was rotary because that's how it was. And then when I was growing up, every phone had a cord on it until I was a grown up. Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing probably when I was like a teenager, in the 80s was the Slimline Phones. I don't know if you remember those. They were a dime a dozen, the ones that had the cord and you hung them on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ferris Bueller's Day Off, he's talking to Mr. Rooney, that kind of phone.
Gotcha.
So that's what most everybody had that had a dial tone, the touch tone. And that's when we got a touch tone phone. That was like, hey, this is cool. I'm not old enough to where we had to crank it and all that kind of stuff. But, it was cool, man. And then, while I didn't have a cell phone until I got older, I worked for places that had the old bag phone. I remember seeing the bag phones. And I remember when I started working for time I was doing some transports for the Department of Corrections. Yes, I used to do that. We used to have a bag phone in the van when we would do transports. And so I've used a bag phone working, and it was weird because it was just weird. It was a weird phone.
Man, you watch like old movies where they've got those weird bag phones that they're carrying around, or even like the very antiquated car phone and stuff like that. And those things were thousands of dollars when they first came out, and it's just.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Google it, guys. Those of you who are listening, Google it. Google the first ever cell phone, which I think that was mid-'70s. I think 74, 75 was when they first built the first cell tower in Chicago. And I think it was somebody to do with Sears or something. And it was in a K car. I do remember seeing that like on History Channel. And they made the first call from a car on a cell. So look where it's come today. It's kind of crazy. Like you, my first cell phone was a Nokia. And I think it almost sounds like the same phone.
Probably.
I went into an LG flip phone. Then I think I had the Razor, the first Razor.
Yep.
I had one of those, and then I had a Sony slide phone that wasn't really a smartphone, and then my first smartphone was an iPhone 5C.
Oh, you jumped right into the iPhone, huh?
I went for iPhone 5C. I went to a iPhone 7, which I retired here around December. And now I'm on the iPhone 11, and I'll tell you what, it's super fast, and oh my goodness. So that is my history with phones. And, of course, I use a phone every day at work, but it's not a handset. Anyway, so we have that. And then you and I, we're talking right now on our phones with headphones. So, it's just amazing the technology from the 1980s, a corded old phone hanging on the wall, to us just, mobile. I mean, we could do this anywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the world. So that's my first example, my first segment of how phone technology since 1980 to today is just, it's light years. It's almost science fiction, wouldn't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know we'll talk about it more later, but you just think about what a phone actually is. A phone is not even used to make telephone calls half the time anymore.
Oh, I know.
But let me ask you this though. I won't get too far ahead of us. Did you ever have one of I don't even remember who it was. It was like Cricket or something like that. Did you ever have one of those like walkie-talkie phones? It was like a cell phone, but it made a little chirp, and you were just like directly.
Yeah, no, but I know somebody who did, and it was annoying as all
so
get out.
Annoying.
I think it was Sprint. I think Sprint was the one that had those at the time because I knew some people, and they would always talk to each other, and I'm like, this is no. If you want a walkie-talkie, go get a walkie-talkie.
And I mean, talk about like never like being disconnected, just like constantly. Anyone can just like chirp into your and the noise. Oh yeah, I would hate that. I'm glad you didn't have that because I was definitely going to make fun of you if you did. But
good. I would have deserved it because that's pretty pretentious,
I mean,
kind of.
I was just gonna say I don't think it lasted too long, but I mean there was definitely like a year or two where I just remember people just being like. Just like talking constantly. I'm like, what are you doing? Why is your phone keep making that noise?
Yeah. Well, heck, kind of bouncing off a couple of thoughts as we're talking about phones, kind of wrapping this up. I mean, you could put your earbuds in now, your AirPods if you're Apple. Mm-hmm. I don't have AirPods. I have Skull Candy, which are just as similar. And you could walk around the house. Phone could be sitting on the table. You could be walking around the house and talking on the phone.
Yep.
That's the Bluetooth technology out there, and it's crazy. We were talking about the flip phone, and every time I see a flip phone, I think of Captain Kirk and his communicator. Kirk to the Enterprise.
Ooh, that makes me think of something else. Do you have an Apple Watch?
I do not, but my wife does.
Yeah, same here. But and think about like when you were a kid and you would see like, James Bond and other spies and stuff like
Right,
that would have like the little phone in their watch. And
well, Knight Rider used to talk to Kit. Michael Knight used to talk to Kit through his watch,
Yeah.
and I think Batman talked to his Batmobile, Michael Keaton.
Oh yeah.
Through his watch. Yeah. So look at us just bouncing ideas. I love it.
But here's the thing, though. Like, I don't think people actually. I mean, you can talk through your watches,
Right.
just like that, and live the spy fantasy. But it's
Yes.
like not even something people do. So like, it's not a
No.
feature that people actually take advantage of.
No, I love watches. I love a nice watch that looks good with an actual dial. I don't like digital watches. And like the Fossil watches and those Citizens, beautiful watches, beautiful timepieces. And if I have a watch again, that's what I would have. I would not. I don't know. I already despise carrying my phone half the time, let alone carrying it on my wrist. I don't need to know that. If it's so important, somebody will get a hold of me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's just me. I'm an old grumpy guy.
I'm just not a watch guy myself, so.
There you go. All right. So our phone segment. Anything else to add there, my friend?
I keep thinking of things I'd like to add, but I think it's going to be more something that's going to be in a later segment, so I'll just shut up for now.
Okay. Teaser. All right. So let's move on to the next segment. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to take a look at another technology from the 1980s that today we could not live without. Trust me. And that's the computer, the home computer. I'll tell you what, David, what was the first computer you remember using?
That is a great question. Honestly, the first computer-like thing that I remember using was actually the Intellivision. It had a component to it that you could play computer programs that actually on cassette tapes, and it had a keyboard and everything like that. That's the first computer-like thing I remember having in my home. But I remember, going to school in the 80s, definitely remember those old, 5-inch floppy disks that had
yes, the real
Oregon Trail
floppy
on
disk.
it. And, and you would put in your whatever Oregon Trail if you were lucky enough to get to play
Right.
a game, or you'd put in like your typing software or whatever. And I remember using those. I don't remember exactly what the computer was, like an old Commodore or something along the lines of that.
Commodore 64. That's an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah.
And that was a big gaming computer there when it first came out, wasn't it?
It was, and I had one years later. I got an old one, and by the time that it was not modern technology at all at this point. But I got it, and I think I would program. I used it to try to learn how to program my own games and play some old games on it and stuff like that. So I do remember using those as well, but years later.
Right. Awesome,
Yeah.
man. So that was your first delve into computers, and of course probably video games, right? I would call those computers as well.
Yeah. So definitely with the Intellivision in particular, that was a video game system. That's pretty much the first video games I remember playing for sure.
Awesome. What was the first computer you owned in your home when you grew up?
When I graduated high school, over the years, I used my grandparents had a really crappy laptop and
Right.
and my that kind of stuff. I used those over the years, but my own first computer when I graduated high school, my father purchased a computer for me, and it was a Hewlett Packard. And this again is the year 2000, and this is right when leading up to this point, I would use like my friends' computers and like I said, my
Right.
grandparents' computers. So I remember do you remember old bulletin boards before websites were
Oh
even a
yes,
thing?
yes. But that was pre-MySpace, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. Bulletin boards are old school. So basically, like when modems first started being a thing, you could dial up and there was no internet,
Right.
so
Oh, yeah.
you would actually go to these things called bulletin boards, which were literally just what's the shoot? Why can't I think of the word for it? It's a series of letters where like you use different
A
characters
cipher?
to. Yeah, no. It's when you use different characters from the
yeah.
keyboard to draw a picture.
Wasn't that where they made the first emoji or something?
Kind of.
It,
Hold on,
like
I'm
it
gonna
was.
look this up
It wasn't.
real quick.
Wasn't it comma dash or no? It was colon dash right parentheses to make a happy face. That was the
Right.
first emoji.
Right, you would definitely do that kind of stuff, and that it does come from those era. But I forget. It's like it starts with there's a an acronym for it. It's like I can't remember it, so you're gonna have to cut this out. But it's like ASIC
No
or
worries.
something like that.
Okay, all right. So
So it's ASCII, which is basically, again, you take characters, so like forward slashes, dollar sign, all the different characters, hashtags, all that kind of stuff, and you make a line of them, and then the next line, and the next line, next line, next line, and you use that to like make a graphic.
Right.
So these old bulletin boards were basically just that, and then like a list of things you could do. Press 1 to do this, press 2 to do this. And there were weird like text games that you could play and stuff like that. Just nothing there really. But that was like the first website. I remember using those. But by the time I got my computer in 2000, at broadband cable internet actually was a thing. So, I remember online gaming, playing things like Unreal Tournament. And, there's all kinds of stuff by that time.
And what kind of computer do you use now? What are you using right now? You don't have to brand drop. I'm just giving you a little grief. I have two different brands in front of me, so
I'm sitting here. My studio actually, I have two laptops that I use. One is kind of older, which I mean, in comparison to the computers we're talking about, in and of itself, it's an innovation. But then a newer one. So I use a compact laptop that I don't even connect to the internet with this thing. This is solely just what I record on. It's basically just a recording device. Sometimes I edit on it. Then I also have a Dell that's newer. But I'm sitting here looking at one screen that I've got open on my compact, and then my Dell has two monitors that I have pulled up that I can Google stuff on and research on and look at other things. To think, if David looked back and the one that was sitting in front of the Hewlett-Packard that I was just talking about with the monitor that, feels like it goes on for 3 feet and weighs 50 pounds to now having these slim high-def monitors. And
that's awesome. I too have I call it an old trusty laptop from 2007, an Acer, and I too use the old laptop to record, and it does a fine job. I have an Hewlett-Packard. That poor thing has got a lot of work lately because I work from home, and this HP's held up. So, all right. So, anything else to add on your computer history, sir, post 1980?
I mean, it's just I think that there is a very interesting culture now. I mean, the people played video games on computers for years and years and years. When you think about gamers now, and if you ever look at people who build their own computers now, where they have like the plexiglass sides and all the lights inside, and they have to have like high tech cooling devices to keep it cool inside, and it's just, I mean, we basically have in our homes now technology. You think about the first computers ever, and they were the entire rooms or entire buildings. And the processing power that we have at our fingertips now is just astonishing compared to what we've seen change over our lifetime, going from a big bulky desktop down to the laptops that we can take anywhere and do whatever we need to, and then those kinds of desktops now, it's just it is pretty astonishing. I almost think that computers themselves are probably the quickest changing and most vastly changing technology that we've seen in our lifetime.
Oh, absolutely. The processors. I mean, if you buy a computer one year, the next year it's already outdated. There's already something better. And there's always, look at Windows. Windows started, 1990 something, 93, 94, something like that. And then now we're at Windows 10, it was boom, 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 boom. And you gotta, if you don't have a Apple product created by, and I figured it out, Mr. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, the Apple back in the day, the old Macintosh. I actually, and if you don't mind, I'm going to go kind of back in my history from my my time in high school in the 80s. This is where I'm a little older than you. My first computer that I dealt with was a Radio Shack Tandy Corporation TRS-80 Model 3, I believe, had 2 disk drives for the old actual floppy disk, and they were all DOS, and they were the monochrome, they were gray, and they were all like one big unit. So, because it was in school, and I remember the big, huge keys, and I can just picture it now. And so I think they called them the trash 80s. I think that's what that was called. Anyway, I moved up the next year and actually did a little programming. I had like a programming class, and we got to use the Apple IIe at the time. And I remember doing a little graphic art type of thing on there. And if they asked me to do it today, I'll tell you I couldn't. But it was just it was a DOS system, and I look at that, and anytime I'm on the computer, I'm like, wow, look where we've come. Using my time in the military, I used computers, but everything was DOS based. It was all dot matrix printer. Remember dot matrix printer? I mean, and then you had to make sure you put the holes on the edge, or else it would get all. I'm sure you've dealt with that in some jobs since you've grown up, haven't you? The old dot matrix printer.
I remember my grandparents having one. I don't know that I ever used one in a job, but
God.
I did work. It just makes me think of working in the bank and the old DOS systems and having to memorize 1,000 different hotkeys to do anything. And
the
silly.
dot matrix printer. Oh yeah. So that's kind of where my computer history started. And the things I've seen come through. My first home computer was a Dell. When Dell was really hot, early 2000s. And the big number one dial-up was AOL. Do you remember that? Do you remember that?
Yep.
Maybe I should put that little, you've got mail. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. I thought you were going to say you should put the sound effect of the dial-up. I'm like, oh, you hate your listeners and you want their ears to bleed. Oh, okay.
The dot matrix printer. Anyway, that's and then you would hear it's like, okay, it's printing, and then you would hear, excuse me, guys, sorry about that, but you would hear that paper just grind, and you'd be like, oh my goodness. So anyway, because you had to open and close those of you a certain age would understand what I'm talking about. I remember that, and then of course, as you mentioned, cable internet came along, and then now fiber optic, and I am in the tech business right now, so I deal with this every day, and I get to know and see the newest technologies, and it's just amazing, and it's all computer driven. You were talking about the size of computers, how when they first started this back in the day, it was the size of a room, and now computers can be as small as you want them to be, really. One other thing, that the processors in like our laptops, and I've heard this, like NASA and their Apollo program, our laptop could have run one of those rockets. The processor in our laptop is a lot bigger than the processor in their computer they use to navigate to the moon. That's just amazing, That tells you where we've come from just from like the late 70s, early 80s. And anyway, so computers, folks, I mean, we use them every day. Thank God for them. There's days where we throw them out the door. There's days like where it's office space where you want to hammer or destroy the printer. Remember that scene in Office Space? Again, another movie reference. That's an awesome scene. That's a great movie too, everybody. And that's when we should do Office Space, as I'm talking out loud about the concession counter.
Yeah, no, I love that.
Look at this. We are just brainstorming. There it is.
Two thoughts that I have. Actually, I've got two thoughts, and then I'm going to ask you a question.
Go ahead, boss.
So just the size of computers and processors and chips and everything just makes me think of, now you see we went from kilobyte to megabyte to gigabyte to terabyte, and now the size of a little SD card or even flash drives that can hold 100. Have you seen the 100 terabyte ones?
I have not, but that's insane.
So small, and they're just so small.
Oh,
and it's just to think that like all that data, how much information you can fit into 100 terabytes, and it's just that small. It's actually really mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing. It is. I mean, you think back to our first computers in our homes. I mean, we're a tenth of that, if that. It was 200 meg. I mean, I think that was big in 2000. 200 meg of RAM. Hey, all right, cool. Now we've got terabytes, and like you said, 100 terabytes and that's an SD card. That's crazy, man. That is crazy. Oh my.
It is crazy. And then it makes me, you talked about movies. It just made me think of, I can't talk about computer technology in the past without talking about the movie Hackers. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah. Oh.
With Matthew Lillard and,
yes.
I almost said Jennifer Connelly. My mind always goes back there, but Angelina Jolie.
Yes.
And I don't know. I can't think of the main character's name right off the top of my head, but yeah, that movie I used to think was so cool. And actually for a long time, any screen name that I had was Crash and Burn. Because of the two of them,
right?
The two main characters from that movie. And just going back and looking at it and how they represented those individuals hacking major corporations' computers and stuff is just so unrealistic, and the graphics do not hold up.
No,
it's absolutely terrible. But I tell you what, I'd sit down and watch that movie right now.
Awesome. So, there we go. If you want a little nostalgia as far as your movies go. We were talking about computers and movies. One of the things that comes to my mind, 1980s, since we're talking 80s, I'm going to give you one line from the movie, and I'll see if you can guess it. Would you like to play a game?
That would be War Games?
Yes.
Starring Matthew Broderick?
Yes.
I believe that was released in 1981. Actually, I don't know if that's true.
But, I mean, really, that was a great movie. And that still holds up, even though it's, and then I remember Doogie Howser always typing into his computer at the end of the episode, too. So, I mean, a lot of things that you were talking about, again, a vehicle like we were talking about with the phone on certain TVs and movies, there was a vehicle with a computer. And I mean, there's been thousands of movies that probably had to do with a computer of some sort, even, well, all the science fiction stuff, where Picard would say computer, and it's
2001 Space Odyssey with Hal.
Yes, Hal.
I can't do that, Dave.
Wow. Maybe we need to do an episode of computers in movies. There we go. It's just, this is a C to Shining C, a.k.a. brainstorm for concession counter. But I'm having way too much fun, David. Any other thoughts on computers, past, present, the technology, and where we've been and where we're going?
Well, being a self-proclaimed movie buff, I do have to say that War Games came out in 1983. I did Google it, but
okay.
But no, I mean, as far as computers are concerned, I mean, it's one of those topics that it's certainly a rabbit hole you could go down.
Oh, it's endless.
Very,
it is endless.
Very, very far. So I know you're probably ready to move along to the next technology you want to speak about. So
it's good, man. It's good. I'm having fun here. I mean, we are brainstorming, having a good time. You guys can probably tell we know each other really well, and I always love recording with David, and the fact that I'm hosting him today is I'm so excited.
Yeah, man, I'm not used to this. I've been on a few people's podcasts, but for the most part, I'm the one that's like, all right, now let's talk about this.
Let's talk about this. All right, folks. So we're going to wrap up the computer segment here. If you give me just a minute, I like, and I told David this, what I like to do every episode is give some sort of public service announcement. And since we're talking about technology and everything, one thing that we always have, whether it be, David, have you ever had a TV where you had to get rid of it? A computer where you had to get rid of it? Getting rid of a TV, you can't just go dump it in the dump, because the old TVs were so heavy. If you had a 27-inch TV, it was 27 inches deep.
The only bone I ever broke was my toe, and I broke it getting rid of a TV. So, yeah.
I know, and there are people that still use those today. Not everybody has a flat screen, guys. And that's actually a teaser, because our next segment's going to be TVs. If you have something like a TV, a computer, any kind of electrical appliance, equipment, anything like that, folks, contact your local recycling center, whatever community you have or something. I have a little recycling center in my area where you can actually take it and drop it off. Sometimes there's a charge, but you don't just dump that stuff. Reach out to your local community. E-waste recycling is what it's called, guys. It's the reuse and reprocessing of an electrical equipment of any type that's been discarded and regarded as obsolete. Recycling of e-waste is a growing trend and was initiated, guess what, to protect us and our environment. I'm not a big environmental guy, but I'd rather not see your TV in a ditch down the road when I'm driving to work. Come on. use some brains here. Keep the e-waste out at landfills. Some places, and I know this, David, that work on TVs. Back in the day, there was always a TV repair shop in every town, and you could usually take it there, and the guy would take it for parts. So if you live in a town that still has something like that, just please give it a thought. If you're getting rid of even your cell phones, there's ways to recycle your cell phone, and they pay you money for it. So e-waste recycling, it's a good thing. Give it a shot if you need to get rid of something. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's something that I should do more in general, even with batteries and things like that. I mean, I can remember times in my life where I just had drawers full of cell phone batteries, and I know that's not a thing anymore, but right now I've probably got a box full of old phones and stuff that I could easily go and do something like that with. And like I said, that story that I was kind of alluding to a little bit ago is the last time I got rid of one of those old big TVs. I threw it in a dumpster, and to try to pick it up and put it over my head, I actually dropped it on my foot first.
Ow!
Broke my toe.
Oh my goodness, man.
And yeah, so I mean, it probably would have been easier to contact a local recycling center and get rid of it the right way instead of throw it in some apartment complex dumpster, which is not the right way.
Well, thank you, folks, for humoring me and letting me talk a little bit about a public service announcement. All right, let's move on to the next segment. Our next segment, dun dun dun, is TV. Telly, as the British say. The telly. I spent 3 years there. I know about the telly, and I'm sure you do, because you're a Britophile, right?
I am. I mean, I could do an episode on British television alone.
British television. So all right, David. So we're talking about TVs, 1980s to today. Yeah. What was the first TV you remember as a little man in 1982?
Oh boy. So there are people who will listen to this that don't know what I mean when I say cabinet television.
Oh, I know.
But we had one of the old RCA TVs, which the thing itself was probably, if you're talking like screen size,
right,
with the cabinet itself, it was probably maybe 48 inches,
right,
but the television, we were lucky to probably actually only have about 28 to 30 inches of actual screen. But this was a piece of furniture.
Oh, absolutely.
This was, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Google cabinet television right now.
Absolutely.
And you will see, I'm looking at it right now. I'm seeing I think I see the model we had. It was an old RCA, and it literally,
there you go.
It was designed to look like a piece of furniture because it took up a lot of floor space.
Oh yes.
And your mom probably put knickknacks and probably had like a doily runner across the top of it.
Did it have wheels? Could you roll it across the carpet or no?
No, this one did not. And let me tell you, anytime you had to move the thing, you had to get dad and your uncle to move it. Right. Because I mean, and let me tell you, this thing did not work well. I don't know if you've ever had to do this, but certain people from a certain age understand when I say that there were times you had to take a shoe and go and beat the side of it.
Yes.
To get the picture to come back in.
Yes.
That was like a real thing, man.
Did you have a TV in your room growing up?
So I did not have a TV in my room until I was probably maybe like 15. So teenager on, I did. But not as a kid, no.
No? Oh, my. No. Well, so you had the cabinet television, and when did you graduate to your own TV, I guess? What did you move up in the world to like a... I don't know, one of the black ones that like the 25, 27 inch that were late 90s, I guess. Yeah.
So probably like early 90s. I remember we got a smaller TV that, the cabinet TV was always on the fritz and we'd have to hit it with a shoe. So we got a smaller TV that was, when it had like the little turn dials on it, probably still, but a little more modern. It was not in a cabinet. It still looked like, again, a big bulky TV, but much smaller. And we actually put it on top of the cabinet TV. Oh my goodness.
Use it as a TV stand. You know what? Everybody did that growing up. Oh my goodness. Oh, yeah. Okay. Did that TV have a remote?
That TV did not have a remote. This was still one you would have to get up and turn. However, at this point we did have a VCR that had a remote. So we pretty much were watching movies and stuff like that through the VCR. So you'd go turn on the TV and then go sit down with your VCR remote.
Everybody who is of a certain age, a VCR is a video cassette recorder, and we might talk about that here later in the episode.
So it looks like a TiVo, which actually, you know what's really sad? A lot of people probably don't even know what a DVR and a TiVo is.
It looks like a cable box with a slot you put something in, and it's not a DVD player.
It looks like a big flat router.
Exactly. There you go. Oh my goodness gracious. So, all right, how old were you when you first used a remote on a TV?
I mean, I probably was young, you know, I would say probably like 12, maybe, maybe a little bit younger. I'm not really sure. I think by the time we moved to a TV that had a remote, I was living in Ohio, so I was probably 10, 11, 12, somewhere around in there. But let me tell you one more story about the cabinet TV.
Okay. I'm enthralled, man. I am. Because I've got a story of my own after you finish about a cabinet TV.
So when we lived in North Dakota, I grew up there very young. But when we lived in North Dakota, the thing would turn itself on and then turn its volume up as loud as it could go, just randomly.
Wow.
So of course we thought that it was haunted and all that kind of stuff. But so you'd just be sitting there in the middle of the night, all of a sudden you just hear the static very low, just like
they're
and it would just get like deafening, right? So Poltergeist,
yes.
It always comes back to movies. Sorry. Definitely had that experience with that cabinet TV. But anyway, I was probably 10, 11, 12 when I really started getting used to using an actual TV remote. What about you?
Well, I started with we had 4 channels and PBS, ABC, NBC, and it was all hand turned, of course, till I was about 8 or 9. And then we got our first cabinet TV, and it had a remote. So
you know
but we had.
I'm sorry.
We had an aerial.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but our cabinet TV did have a remote too. But you talk about what that remote was like, because that's not what you think of as.
It was a clicker. We called it a clicker. You know why we called it a clicker? Because it clicked. And you could probably see some TV shows from back in the day that call it a clicker. You know, I think maybe Archie Bunker had one, didn't he? I don't know. Anyway.
Oh, man, I forgot about clickers, man. See, I didn't even think about that as a remote.
Yes. And ours was not more or less a cabinet TV. It was a console. So it was as long as a table, had like a 25-inch screen that had speakers on the side. Again, it would put knickknacks and everything else on top of it. The VCR when we finally got it. And anyway, so that was early
Your mom's
80s.
Precious Moments figurines.
Yeah,
all that
stuff. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, there was a time TV. What we've seen in our lifetime is kind of crazy. So we went and had the cabinet TV, and then we got cable, man. I had an aerial until I was probably 12 or 13. And then in about the time I was 12 or 13 is when cable came to our town. Yes, cable came to our town early 80s, y'all. It wasn't like readily available until like 84, 85. And it was the Gerald box. Do you remember the Gerald box?
So I'm going to tell you what I think you're talking about, and you tell me if this is what it is. It basically had almost like a clicker. It had like little buttons on the top that you would like push down on, and it would be like one of the channels.
It was definitely a clicker. It was a clicker on steroids with a wire. And if you busted that wire, man, you were screwed. But you would also try to hold 2 buttons down to try to look at the naughty channels. Did you ever do that?
Yeah, because channels were scrambled,
like Showtime and Cinemax and all that. We didn't get that. So, oh my goodness, the things we did as kids. But
man, you're taking me down a memory lane. I forgot about that too.
Believe it or not, I moved out and joined the military. My first TV I bought outside of the house was, guess what? A console TV that spun. It was a Magnavox. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. But
Did
it
you
looked
say
cool.
That would spin?
Yeah, it had it was swivel, kind of like,
it had like
your TVs now where you could pivot, to move it on the wall. This was it was a wood grain, and it was on like a pedestal, so you could turn it to watch it,
Okay.
Yeah, so that was a Magnavox. That was my first TV. And then as a teenager, I had an old black and white. Yes, everybody, I used a black and white television, and I liked it. It was all right. It was a TV in my room, man. I was 14. I was happy.
All right. What was 14-year-old Chris watching on TV?
MASH and Dukes of Hazzard, A-Team.
Nice.
And I'll tell you what, I had the bunny rabbit ears, which I'll tell you what, I still use rabbit ears on my TV in the garage. Yes.
What?
Yes, I do. Because I live in an area where I can pick up at least 15 channels via the digital tuner in there. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
A digital version of it. You don't have like the old
right.
aluminum extendable.
No. Okay. But they're pretty inexpensive in the way the digital tuners, and we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but the digital tuners in TV today, it's just going back to what we used to do. And it's awesome. Yeah. I love it. But no, I had the black and white TV had rabbit ears built into it, and I had the rabbit ears completely extended, and I had aluminum foil on the edge of them.
Yeah, of course. Had to,
man. So yeah, that's kind of my TV experience. And today we've got 5 flat screens in the house, not necessarily big ones, but they're a dime a dozen now. They're beautiful. With what we have today, they're beautiful. I never would have thought. You watch a station on your cable that is not in high definition, and you're like, you want to clean your eyes out. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Pixelated.
Very spoiled. And here's the thing, with cutting the cable, people don't really use satellite and cable and those kind of things like they used to. It's all streaming services and digital services now.
Right.
I was thinking about this earlier. Basically, televisions have become just big monitors.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it's
definitely
big monitors to use for gaming systems, for streaming services. And that's really about it. I mean, and literally the 2 monitors that I have in front of me are space age TVs compared to the TVs we had before.
Definitely.
And I can actually I can play my Switch on one of these monitors right now, or I could watch any movie or any television program on these, let alone the 60-inch that I've got in my living room right now. It's just, they're all just big monitors.
Exactly. No, it's just crazy. Just both you and I, and while I had probably something a little older to start with, we both ended up here today with the TVs that we have. And any other thoughts on a TV before I'm going to put a nice big pretty bow on all this that we've talked about before we kind of head down the end of the trail here. But any other thoughts on TVs, past, present, currently?
There's a range of TVs in between the ones that I've talked about and the ones that I kind of just finished up with here. But again, I think that you've pretty much covered it all.
Wonderful. Well, folks, we've talked about our first phones we have today, phones we've used, our first computer, and what we've dealt with in computer-wise, and how computers, we use today. And we've looked at TVs, both our past, present, and so on and so forth. Well, guess what, everybody? How many of you in your pocket, in your car, if you're listening, on your desk, on your dresser, you have what we call as a smartphone? And guess what? All 3 of those are in a nice, pretty little package in your smartphone. Would you agree, David?
Oh, I mean, those 3 things add gaming system, GPS, camera.
That's just the basics.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of technology. I like you hit the big 3 for sure, but yeah, it's a bunch of technology mishmashed down to a size of a small flat brick.
I mean, you could watch live TV on your phone. You could do computer. I mean, you could do anything you could do on a laptop. You virtually could do now on your smartphone, one way or another. Yeah. I don't personally, because I have old eyes, and of course my wife gives me grief about that because I have my text as large as I can, so I don't have to squint. Anyway.
She calls you Old Eyes Casey, doesn't she?
Yes, Old Eyes Casey. Old Eyes Casey. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that pretty much wraps this episode in a bow. Everybody, and you're going to go like, yeah, he's right. I do have all those in there. I always say, and I said this in college when I was going back to college, and I had a class about technology, and I said, we look at our technology today. We have a laptop in our pocket, literally.
Yeah.
Your smartphone is a laptop, and it's just amazing. And I'll tell you what, in 20 years, who knows what we're going to have? Are we going to have, we already have smart houses and smart things, and I actually work with smart things every day. that aren't so smart sometimes. But who knows, man? I mean, the sky's the limit, really, if you think about it. But
yeah. I think probably the only way that technology can become more amazing. I mean, we have everything at our fingertips. Of course, that can become faster and give us access to more things. And I do think that will take place. But you look back in science fiction, and you mentioned like the tricorder and stuff like that. From Star Trek. I mean, we have that in our phone now.
I mean, probably, would you say medical? The medical field is probably where things are becoming light years ahead of where they were just 20 years ago, and making things smaller, faster. And I think that's to our benefit. If we could not just make it for our personal use, but for like the medical profession and things like that. Absolutely. Let's, reach for the stars, as it were.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. The only thing that I can think of is how we interact with the technology. You mentioned medical. I mean, does that mean that we'll have implants where we become a little bit more of the technology and those kind of things? I mean, that's where I was kind of alluding to with science fiction. You think back about the things that you've seen in movies and science fiction, and it seemed like it would never happen, and now it is happening.
It is.
And you start to think, well, if that's been possible and we can do this, what will we really start to dive into? And,
absolutely.
Obviously, there's some ethical questions there as well, but
right. That's for another episode. Well, let's finish this episode, David. Man, I've had so much fun. This has been awesome. We got we got one more segment, folks. We always tend to get together and we always talk for at least an hour. Hopefully you guys have stayed with us and enjoyed our nostalgic look back to what we carry in our pocket now, in essence. So I got 7 things from Popular Mechanics that I found, this American technology from the 1980s. And I'm going to talk about these. I'll tell you what they are, and we'll just bounce it. If you had it, if you remember it, what you thought of it. How's that sound? Good with you?
Yeah, man.
All right, cool. All right, so, and I'll start at number 7 and go up. How about that? All right, so number 7. Okay, number 7 is the Space Shuttle. On April 12th, 1981, Columbia blasted into orbit to inaugurate its STS-1, the maiden voyage of the Space Shuttle program. Do you remember the Space Shuttle?
I do. I don't think that, really when I was aware of the space program and things like that, I think that the heyday of the space program had kind of come and gone. Right. NASA was not nearly as impressive as what it was before my time. But I mean, certainly, yeah. I mean, especially now with SpaceX and other things like that.
It's great to see it come back. I'm a fan of the space program. I mean, the shuttle stopped flying with Atlantis in 2011. Of course, they had the tragedy with Columbia and the tragedy with the Challenger that I remember vividly because I was a sophomore in high school and our teacher turned it on the television. We watched it in 1986. That was a sad day to see that explode. It was like, wow. But that's probably my most vivid memory of the space shuttle. And then I actually got to see the shuttle being ferried on the 747 when I was in the Air Force in Arizona. They had stopped at our base and fueled, and so I got to see it from that point of view. I didn't get to go up to it and actually look really close, but yeah, that's cool. So yeah, that was number 7 on their list, the space shuttle. All right, number 6 is the the home computer, where it all began. The 80s makes point pretty plainly. In 1980, American offices ran on typewriters and real carbon copies. Do you remember carbon copies?
Kind of.
By the end of the 1980s, the world in the midst of the PC revolution. And that's all that needs to be said.
Yep.
There's a tagline here I'm going to read. It says, "Fire up the DeLorean, Apple II forever."
Nice.
So, anyway, where's that DeLorean? Yeah. All right. So, number 5, something you and I both love. It shows a nice big picture of a video game console. And you already mentioned your first video game console was in television. The one they show here in the story is a NES, the original NES. Myself, in October of 1977, it was probably Christmas of 77, an Atari 2600 invaded American households. I remember the 2600. I played that till my fingers were bleeding, So, and then of course I had an NES. Everybody had an NES in the 90s.
Of course.
So that's number 5. And I'll tell you what PlayStation and Xbox now. I have an outdated Xbox 360 in my garage that I play when I can,
Yep.
I can't talk my wife into getting a actual arcade game. That's my next purchase. I want to get that.
You need one of those, and you need a pinball machine, man.
Oh, yes. And then a wet bar, and then, and then Chris Casey's Bar and Grill. Anyway, number 4, this is a big picture of what I mentioned earlier, cable TV. Yes, everybody, there was TV before cable, before satellite. And anyway, so basic cable was, as we know, was born in the 1970s with Ted Turner beamed his TBS around the country by satellite. So did you know that TBS was the first cable channel? I did not know that.
I did not know that, but I'm not surprised. I mean, he definitely had a monopoly for a long time. TNT, TBS, Turner Classic Movies. I mean, you name it.
Right.
His thumbprint was on it for a long time, so I'm not surprised. But man, the hours I have wasted on television.
Oh
I
my
could have
gosh.
done something with my life, brother.
Well, and I remember a certain time on August 1st, 1981, was the arrival of a station that is no longer, it's still around, but it doesn't do what it used to. MTV. 1981 is when MTV, and that's when they actually had music on MTV. So that's number 4, cable TV. Number 3, dun dun dun, the cell phone. Yes, when you think of the chunky early cell phones, it says the cell phone is celebrating its anniversary from 1973. It is when it was first introduced. However, Motorola didn't market the device until 1983. So 83 is pretty much when it started. They found the technology in 1973, according to this Popular Mechanics here. And cell phones, we've kind of already hit that pretty hard, aren't we? So,
not an hour goes by in my waking day where I don't look at a cell phone. So
yeah, it's pretty sad. I like to just turn mine off and I'm done. All right,
talking about wasting time and could have done something with your life. But anyway, go ahead.
Number 2, the video cassette recorder. Yes, the VCR, as we called it. Man, Blockbuster Video. Remember going to Blockbuster?
Heck yeah, man. I loved going to Blockbuster.
Blockbuster was like a candy store. Like, we got to see this movie. We didn't have it at our fingertips, y'all. We had to go, and if somebody else had it checked out, man, you were screwed. You couldn't see the movie. I mean, they'd have like
how
two
many
or three
weekends
copies.
of mine? Yeah, how many weekends of mine started? I'm going to go spend the night at one of my friend's house. We got to go to Blockbuster first.
Yep.
We're going to get some movies. We're going to get some video games. Like, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then the tapes would wear out, or if you heard the tape getting eaten, and then you tried to fix it, and and you better have had a head cleaner, right? You would rent these tapes and people wouldn't take care of their recorders. The tapes would get bad. And that was the only thing about renting a videotapes. Man, that's a whole other episode. We could, oh my goodness, that's just nostalgia, bleeding nostalgia. All right. And the number 1 on this list, the Walkman, the Sony Walkman. It pretty much revolutionized music, wouldn't you say? I mean, literally. From the record player to the cassette, the Sony Walkman.
Another piece of technology that got swallowed up by the cell phone.
Oh, it did. It did. Absolutely. And the iPad and iPod generation came and pretty much squashed it to nothing. I don't even know if you can buy a Walkman of any sort now.
Did you ever have a Discman?
I did have a Discman, which was the big brother or the little brother to that. It came later. But yeah, the Sony Walkman. I didn't have a Sony. I had a Walkman. But I think it was a GPX. But hey, it played cassette tapes. It was stereo. Had my headphones, man. I had a boom boxes as well.
Oh yeah, heck yeah.
So man, this has been a lot of fun. This has been a whole lot of fun. I appreciate you joining me today here on Sea to Shining Sea. Your final thoughts, sir, and all this nostalgic look back at all of our technology. I love that we found some ideas here, man. What do you say?
Yeah, I think it all boils down to the fact that all of this technology is at our fingertips and our cell phone 24 hours a day. Like I literally go to sleep with my cell phone, plug it in on the nightstand next to me. First thing I do when I wake up is we'll turn my alarm clock off. Oh, there's another piece of technology that got swallowed up by the cell phone.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh man, that is right.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Yeah. And then, the first thing I do is cell phone. Second thing of the day I do is cell phone. Fourth thing of the day I do is cell phone. Like it's cell phone, cell phone, cell phone, because everything that we talked about today and so many other pieces of technology, I'm sure if we continue down this path, I would probably say, 1,000 other technologies that got swallowed up by the cell phone. It's that is the source of all entertainment,
Yes.
information, communication, everything now. And
Right.
I wonder what it would be like to be a kid growing up in these
Oh my goodness.
times.
Oh my goodness.
Are they going to have nostalgic feelings towards this technology like we
Right.
do towards the VCR
Right.
and all of these antiquated things? It was such more tactile. It was so much
Right.
more
Yeah,
hands-on.
absolutely. I mean, it's not. What's the drive-through society we have now? Have everything at your
demand.
fingertips. It's we had to work for things, man.
Yeah.
You had to plan ahead, like you were saying. You had to say,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to get this. What movies am I going to get? What movies are there? This,
Yeah.
and then oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's days, and I have plenty of streaming services. You know that. And what do I watch today? Do I watch this? Do I watch that?
Yeah.
And I think back to the day what we were talking earlier, where I had 4 channels,
Yeah.
and you watch what was on. And if a show was on, and you missed it, dude, you missed it.
Yeah.
And if you didn't have a VCR set for that, it wasn't like where you can go back and watch all. There was no such thing as binge watching.
Yeah.
Right.
And to your point, you mentioned I'm just going to use the Friends as an example here because you
Right.
mentioned that show a little bit ago. You can now be like, oh, you remember that one episode? Like, kind of. Oh, here it is.
Yes.
Instantly.
Exactly.
In the time it takes you to open up one of those apps and search the season, like that's it. So,
Wow. Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
folks, thank you again, David, for joining me here. Man, this is a blast. We need to do another episode of the Concession Counter. Folks,
we do.
please check out David. David, what streaming services are you on with People versus Happiness?
I mean, pretty much anything. Anywhere you listen to a podcast, you're going to find me. Of course, you got the big ones, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, all that kind of stuff. I mean, search the People versus Happiness and you'll find me. There's, of course, the Buzzsprout website itself. You can play
Yes.
every single episode. There are currently, as of today, 41 episodes of the People
Awesome.
versus Happiness. You'll find a lot of, the Concession Counter is going to be Chris Casey and myself.
Yes.
Again, you'll find that 80s nostalgia and Clearing of the Past with my sister. And then you're going to find just a bunch of other stuff that's kind of here and there and experimental. And we just talk about happiness, and we do what makes us happy. So
Absolutely. Do what makes you happy. Thanks again, David, for joining us. I do appreciate it. Everybody, please reach out. I'd love to hear some feedback at Chris Casey 71. Yeah, and what is your Twitter handle for People versus Happiness, David?
that would be TPVH Podcast.
All right, so you can reach out to David on his Twitter as well, and you could shoot me an email. Shoot me an email at the letter C, 2 shining, letter C, 2019 at gmail.com. Again, thanks everybody. Stay tuned for the next episode. The next episode, I'm going to do a bit of a movie episode. I've done military movies. I've done football movies. Well, I'm going to do a movie star episode. I'm going to take a look at an American icon who shares a state that we were born in. We were both natives of this state. That icon is the one and only John Wayne. So I'm going to take a look at John Wayne's life and his background, and also give you my top 5 John Wayne movies. I love doing that. I love doing the top 5, and people tend to like hearing about it. So I'm a big John Wayne fan. He was born in the same state as myself. That was the state of Iowa, as I mentioned before. He is my favorite of all time, and he is an American icon. Of course, I have David, I have a poster of him in my garage. An American patriot. I'll have to send you a picture of it. I'm trying to step out of my comfort zone of sports and military and talk a little bit more about other things that I enjoy. And this was just a nostalgic trip that I work with technology every day, and I thought my friend David and I could we're both tech junkies, aren't we, David?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So, all right, man. We did about an hour and 20 minutes. I think this is the longest episode we've done. What do you think?
Yeah, I think probably so. And honestly, I know we say this all the time, but we probably could have gone for another 5 hours, man.
Oh, I know. Well, David, hope you join us again, sir. Again, thank you so much for joining me here, and I can't wait to record with you again. Folks, join us next time here on Sea to Shining Sea. Have a great day and a better tomorrow. I'm Chris Casey, and have a good one.